The early morning fog clung to the streets of Washington, D.C. like a shroud, muting the usual hum of the city. Special Agent Ryan Callahan pulled up in his unmarked SUV, the tires crunching on the gravel of a nondescript alley. He wasn't here for a simple theft or a routine investigation. This call had the tone of urgency that only came from the FBI's higher-ups, the kind that made a seasoned agent like him sit up straight in his seat. The crime scene was cordoned off with yellow tape, fluttering slightly in the cold November wind. Beyond it lay a quiet, modern office building, its glass facade reflecting the dim light of dawn. What struck Ryan immediately was the eerie silence. The street should have had delivery trucks, burly commuters, garbage trucks, anything. But here, there was nothing. Just the distant wail of a police siren, growing louder. Inside, the scene was a chaotic contrast to the pristine exterior. Papers were scattered across the floor as though a storm had swept through, chairs toppled, and computer monitors glowed with frozen screens of charts and encrypted files. A faint chemical smell hung in the air, sharp enough to make Ryan wrinkle his nose. Detective Lena Ortiz, already on the scene, met him halfway down the corridor. Her brow was furrowed, a mix of exhaustion and alarm etched into her features. "Morning, Callahan," she said without preamble. "You're not going to like what you're looking at." Ryan followed her into what appeared to be the central lab of the building. The room was sterile, almost clinical, but the sense of disorder contradicted that. On the floor, a series of high-tech devices had been smashed or disconnected, and a large digital map flickered ominously on the wall. The map showed multiple locations across the U.S., each marked with a red dot. Ryan's stomach tightened. There was a pattern here, a deliberate message. "Any witnesses?" he asked. "None. Building security cameras were wiped clean. Professionals did this," Lena said grimly. "But there's more. We found this." She held up a small, metallic device, no bigger than a smartphone but far more complex in appearance. Tiny blinking lights danced across its surface. Ryan leaned closer, studying the intricate circuitry. "This isn't just a bomb," he said slowly. "It's something different. I can't quite place it, but it's not conventional." A sound drew their attention, a muffled groan coming from a nearby storage room. Ryan drew his sidearm and moved cautiously. Inside, they found a man slumped against a crate, his clothes torn, face bruised, and eyes wide with fear. Who are you?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone steady. The man coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. I shouldn't be here," he whispered. They called it Project Helios. It's dangerous, for everyone." Ryan exchanged a sharp glance with Lena. "Project Helios," he repeated. The man nodded weakly. "They've taken control. It's not just a weapon, it's..." His voice trailed off, and he passed out, leaving Ryan with an ominous chill that crawled up his spine. Ryan knew immediately that this was no ordinary case. Whatever Project Helios was, it had the potential to reach far beyond this building. If it fell into the wrong hands, the consequences for the United States could be catastrophic. He looked around the room again. The map on the wall, the scattered devices, the cryptic warnings, all of it painted a picture of a carefully orchestrated plan. And somewhere out there, the people behind it were already moving to stay one step ahead. As he stepped back into the corridor, Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from the director of the FBI, Callahan: "Secure the site and get the device. Time is critical. We think it's already in transit. Stop it before it's too late." The weight of the moment pressed down on him. He had walked into a crime scene, but what he had uncovered was bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than he had imagined. Somewhere in the shadows of the city, the true threat of Project Helios was waiting, and Ryan Callahan was the only one standing in its way. Part 2, Investigation plus Suspense. Ryan Callahan drove through the foggy streets of D.C., the small metallic device secured in a lead-lined case on the passenger seat. His mind was racing faster than the car. Project Helios wasn't just another criminal scheme, it had the markings of a highly sophisticated operation, probably involving international players. Every instinct told him this was bigger than anything he'd seen in years. At FBI headquarters, Ryan was ushered into a high-security lab. Specialists in cyber threats and counterterrorism were already gathered, peering at the device with a mix of fascination and unease. Dr. Maya Thorne, a cyber intelligence analyst with a reputation for spotting hidden threats, approached him. "This is unlike anything I've seen," she said, adjusting her glasses. "The encryption alone, it's layered so deep it would take months to crack using conventional methods. Whoever built this didn't want it intercepted. They wanted it unstoppable." Ryan leaned closer, studying the blinking lights. "Unstoppable in what way? What does it do?" Lena tapped her earpiece. "Local surveillance shows a container with abnormal heat signatures. Could be it." Ryan nodded. He motioned for a tactical team to surround the terminal. Inside, every second mattered. As they advanced, the faint hum of machinery grew louder, and a sudden spike in temperature indicators set off alarms in their equipment. Then, a shadow moved. Quick, deliberate. Someone was trying to intercept them. "Contact!" Ryan shouted, drawing his sidearm. He and Lena ducked behind a stack of crates as a figure in black surged forward. The gunfire was short but intense, heavily trained, precise. Ryan took cover, calculating every move, every possibility. The attacker vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a single black briefcase. Ryan's pulse raced as he approached it cautiously. Inside, nothing. Just an empty compartment, except for a small digital display blinking ominously. A message appeared on the screen: "Stop chasing or Helios activates. You have 12 hours. Ryan felt the weight of the words. The message wasn't just a threat, it was a countdown. Whoever had created Project Helios had anticipated the FBI's every move, manipulating events like pieces on a chessboard. He looked at Lena. "They're taunting us. They want us to panic." Their next stop was a secure FBI tracking operation in Virginia. Analysts were already mapping possible routes, using GPS, traffic cameras, and airline manifests to predict the vehicle's path. Every scenario seemed like a dead end, but then a faint signal pulsed through the tracking system, a digital breadcrumb left behind by the device itself. "Got something," Lena said, pointing to the screen. "It's faint, but it's moving southeast. Could be heading toward New York." Ryan didn't hesitate. "Then we go. Now." The drive was tense, each mile punctuated by updates from the analysts. The fog had thickened along the highways, as if the city itself was conspiring to slow them down. Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always one step ahead, watching, waiting. By late evening, they caught up to the trail, a small cargo terminal on the outskirts of Newark. It was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that screamed danger. Ryan approached the terminal cautiously, his eyes scanning for movement. Through the windows, he could see rows of shipping containers, a few workers moving mechanically, unaware, or pretending to be unaware, of the threat inside. But deep down, he knew the truth: this was no ordinary case. Project Helios was smarter than any adversary he had ever faced, more lethal than any weapon on record. And somewhere out there, the people behind it were already planning their next move. As midnight approached, Ryan and Lena prepared to deploy the team for the next phase, an infiltration operation based on the signal's coordinates. Outside, the city slept, unaware that a storm was brewing, one that could change the country forever. And in the shadows, a figure watched. Calm, precise, and confident. Project Helios was alive, and it was just getting started. Part 3, Climax plus Resolution. The coordinates led Ryan Callahan and his team to an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Philadelphia. The fog had thickened, casting a ghostly pall over the rusted metal beams and shattered windows. The place looked deserted, but Ryan knew better. Project Helios had already proven itself to be several steps ahead. Every creak, every shadow could hide a lethal adversary. Ryan crouched behind a stack of crates, the device secured in a lead-lined containment box. Lena Ortiz joined him, scanning the perimeter with binoculars. No signs of activity, yet, she whispered. Ryan shook his head. That's exactly why we need to move. They want us to think the place is empty. Helios thrives on our hesitation. The infiltration team advanced silently. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous space. As they reached the center of the complex, a series of blinking lights caught Ryan's eye, a massive server setup connected to a network of devices that matched the digital signature of the first Helios device they had recovered. Multiple devices, Lena breathed. They're linked. Part 3, Climax plus Resolution. The coordinates led Ryan Callahan and his team to an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Philadelphia. The fog had thickened, casting a ghostly pall over the rusted metal beams and shattered windows. The place looked deserted, but Ryan knew better. Project Helios had already proven itself to be several steps ahead. Every creak, every shadow could hide a lethal adversary. Ryan crouched behind a stack of crates, the device secured in a lead-lined containment box. Lena Ortiz joined him, scanning the perimeter with binoculars. No signs of activity, yet, she whispered. Ryan shook his head. That's exactly why we need to move. They want us to think the place is empty. Helios thrives on our hesitation. The infiltration team advanced silently. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous space. As they reached the center of the complex, a series of blinking lights caught Ryan's eye, a massive server setup connected to a network of devices that matched the digital signature of the first Helios device they had recovered. Multiple devices, Lena breathed. They're linked, Part 3, Climax plus Resolution. The coordinates led Ryan Callahan and his team to an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Philadelphia. The fog had thickened, casting a ghostly pall over the rusted metal beams and shattered windows. The place looked deserted, but Ryan knew better. Project Helios had already proven itself to be several steps ahead. Every creak, every shadow could hide a lethal adversary. Ryan crouched behind a stack of crates, the device secured in a lead-lined containment box. Lena Ortiz joined him, scanning the perimeter with binoculars. No signs of activity, yet, she whispered. Ryan shook his head. That's exactly why we need to move. They want us to think the place is empty. Helios thrives on our hesitation. The infiltration team advanced silently. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous space. As they reached the center of the complex, a series of blinking lights caught Ryan's eye, a massive server setup connected to a network of devices that matched the digital signature of the first Helios device they had recovered. Multiple devices, Lena breathed. They're linked. Part 3, Climax plus Resolution. The coordinates led Ryan Callahan and his team to an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Philadelphia. The fog had thickened, casting a ghostly pall over the rusted metal beams and shattered windows. The place looked deserted, but Ryan knew better. Project Helios had already proven itself to be several steps ahead. Every creak, every shadow could hide a lethal adversary. Ryan crouched behind a stack of crates, the device secured in a lead-lined containment box. Lena Ortiz joined him, scanning the perimeter with binoculars. No signs of activity, yet, she whispered. Ryan shook his head. That's exactly why we need to move. They want us to think the place is empty. Helios thrives on our hesitation. The infiltration team advanced silently. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous space. As they reached the center of the complex, a series of blinking lights caught Ryan's eye, a massive server setup connected to a network of devices that matched the digital signature of the first Helios device they had recovered. Multiple devices, Lena breathed. They're linked. Before Ryan could respond, a voice echoed through the empty hall, distorted and cold. Agent Callahan. I was wondering how long it would take you to find us. A figure stepped out from the shadows, a tall, imposing man in tactical gear, his eyes cold and calculating. This was the mastermind behind Project Helios. I must admit, the man continued, your persistence is impressive. But futile. Helios will activate in 10 minutes. The countdown has begun. Ryan's jaw tightened. You're not going to get away with this. The man smirked. I already have. One wrong move, and the entire network detonates, digitally, physically, chaos everywhere. New York, Chicago, D.C., all vulnerable. The country will collapse before you can even stop me. Ryan glanced at Lena. We need to split. You take the server and disable the network. I'll handle him. Lena shook her head. There's no time. We do it together. The team spread out, moving with precision. Ryan engaged the mastermind in a tense hand-to-hand struggle, dodging strikes and countering with calculated blows. The man was skilled, faster than any combat training Ryan had encountered, but Callahan's determination and experience gave him the edge in endurance. Meanwhile, Lena and the technical team worked feverishly at the servers. Maya Thorne's fingers flew over the keyboard, bypassing layers of encryption with a combination of brute force algorithms and intuition. Every second mattered, the countdown clock on the central console ticked down, mocking their efforts. 5 minutes. Lena shouted over the noise, her voice tight with urgency. Ryan slammed the mastermind into a steel beam, buying Lena crucial seconds. But the man recovered quickly, pulling a small detonator from his vest. You can't stop it now, he snarled. Ryan acted instinctively, knocking the detonator from his hand. Sparks flew, and the man stumbled back, cursing under his breath. At that moment, Lena shouted, "We're in." The screens flickered as the network's security protocols began to collapse. One by one, the devices connected to Project Helios shut down, their lights fading from red to green. The countdown froze. Silence fell over the complex, a tense, brittle silence that felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Ryan moved to secure the mastermind, cuffing him with practiced efficiency. It's over, he said, though his voice betrayed the adrenaline pumping through him. The mastermind glared, his expression unreadable. You think this is the end? Helios is not a man, it's an idea. And ideas cannot be destroyed. Ryan met his gaze evenly. Then we'll be ready the next time someone tries. Outside, the first rays of dawn broke through the fog. The city below stirred to life, unaware of the catastrophe that had been averted by mere minutes. Ryan and Lena stood together, watching the sunrise, exhausted but resolute. Dr. Thorne approached, her expression tired but triumphant. The devices are secure, and the network is neutralized. We've also traced communications leading to several key operatives. This isn't over, but we have time to dismantle the rest before they can regroup. Ryan nodded. Then we move quickly. Project Helios may have been stopped today, but someone tried to bring the country to its knees. That kind of threat doesn't disappear overnight. As they left the industrial complex, Ryan couldn't shake the words of the mastermind. Ideas cannot be destroyed. But he also knew that the men and women of the FBI, working together, could meet any threat, no matter how sophisticated or deadly, with courage, precision, and determination. Later, in the debriefing room at FBI headquarters, the director addressed the team. Today, you saved countless lives. Project Helios was designed to be unstoppable, but your quick thinking and teamwork proved otherwise. The threat is neutralized, and the devices are in secure containment. We owe each of you our deepest thanks. Ryan leaned back in his chair, exhausted but relieved. He glanced at Lena and Dr. Thorne. We stopped them, he said quietly. For now. Lena smirked, her hand brushing a smudge of soot from her jacket. For now, she echoed. But I have a feeling we'll be seeing more of this. Someone doesn't give up on an idea that easily. Ryan nodded. Outside the building, the city gleamed in the early morning light. Normalcy had been restored, but beneath the surface, the shadow of Project Helios lingered, a reminder that threats would always exist, and heroes would always rise to meet them. And for Ryan Callahan, it was a promise: no matter what came next, he would be ready. Part 4, Conclusion plus Reflection. The weeks after the neutralization of Project Helios were a strange mix of relief and unease. Washington, D.C. had returned to its usual rhythm: the bustle of morning commutes, the honking of impatient drivers, the soft hum of helicopters over the Capitol, but beneath the surface, the country remained on edge. The FBI had officially contained the devices, and several key operatives had been apprehended, yet Ryan Callahan knew that threats like Helios didn't simply vanish. They evolved, adapted, and waited for the slightest misstep. Ryan sat in his office late one evening, the city lights stretching like veins across the horizon. The containment case that had held the first Helios device rested on a reinforced table in the lab below, guarded by a network of security protocols, armed personnel, and digital safeguards. It was a monument to the threat they had faced, and yet it was only a symbol of the complexity of modern warfare, the type fought not with armies and tanks, but with code, data, and carefully engineered devices capable of destabilizing nations. He sipped his coffee, now cold, as his mind replayed the events of the last few weeks. Every decision, every instinct, had been tested. The memory of the mastermind's calm, calculating eyes haunted him still. That man had not just built a weapon, he had created an idea, a concept of fear and control that was frighteningly elegant in its simplicity. And the idea, Ryan realized, was far more dangerous than the technology itself. Lena Ortiz entered the office quietly, carrying a folder of intelligence updates. "Late night?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Ryan shook his head. "Just thinking." She set the folder down and glanced at the horizon. "You mean thinking about Helios?" "Yeah," he admitted. "About the whole thing. How close we came, and how lucky we were." Lena nodded. "Luck only goes so far. Skill, experience, and teamwork got us through. You kept a clear head when everything was falling apart. Most people wouldn't have made it to the end." Ryan appreciated her words, but he couldn't shake the lingering unease. "It's not just that. Helios isn't gone. The devices may be secured, and the operatives arrested, but the knowledge, the planning, the code, they exist. Someone will pick up where they left off. Someone will try again." Lena frowned. "Do you think it'll be soon?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "I don't know. But I do know we need to be ready. Because we can't wait until the threat is on our doorstep. That's the lesson of Helios. We can stop one attack, maybe even two, but if we're reactive, we're already behind." The next few days were consumed by debriefings, interviews, and strategic planning sessions. Ryan and Lena worked closely with Dr. Maya Thorne to create predictive models of future attacks, trying to anticipate the moves of anyone who might attempt to replicate or expand Project Helios. The work was meticulous, exhausting, and mentally taxing, but Ryan found a strange comfort in it. For him, action was the antidote to fear. Planning, preparation, and execution were the tools that allowed him to face uncertainty without succumbing to it. One afternoon, as Ryan reviewed the digital blueprints of the devices recovered, he felt a pang of responsibility. Helios had been more than a physical threat, it had been a psychological one. The mastermind behind it had understood that fear could be as powerful as destruction. And in the aftermath, Ryan realized, part of the battle wasn't just neutralizing devices, it was managing the fear that lingered in the hearts and minds of ordinary citizens. He thought of the man they had captured, the mastermind himself, now confined to a maximum security facility, isolated and under constant surveillance. Ryan wondered if, behind those cold, calculating eyes, there was any regret, or if he saw himself as a pioneer, a visionary whose genius had been interrupted by law enforcement. It was a sobering thought. Intelligence, ambition, and the capacity for evil often walked hand in hand. And while the FBI had won the battle, the war of ideas, of influence, control, and innovation, was ongoing. Helios had shown Ryan the fragility of security, and the ease with which chaos could spread in a world so interconnected and dependent on technology. Late one evening, Ryan walked the perimeter of the lab where the devices were stored. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic. He paused, looking at the containment units and the heavy doors that sealed them off from the world. The devices were inert now, harmless unless tampered with, but they represented potential, the kind of potential that could reshape nations if it fell into the wrong hands. He reflected on the personal cost of the mission. Nights without sleep, the adrenaline-fueled tension of every encounter, the constant pressure to think several moves ahead, it took its toll. He thought of the moments when he had doubted his own judgment, when the mastermind's taunts had echoed in his mind, when the countdowns had made seconds feel like hours. And yet, he realized that every moment of fear had sharpened him, made him more aware, more vigilant. Lena joined him quietly, standing beside him without speaking. For a long time, they just watched the faint glow of the city, the silent acknowledgement of shared experience passing between them. Finally, Lena broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder if we're making a difference? Or if these threats will just keep coming?" Ryan considered her question carefully. "I do. Every day. But I also know that doing nothing isn't an option. If we don't step in, someone else will face the consequences. People rely on us to be proactive, to anticipate the worst, and to act when necessary. That's what makes a difference." She nodded slowly. "And we did. Today, we saved lives. Tomorrow, we'll be ready for the next one." Ryan allowed himself a small, rare smile. "Exactly. That's all we can do. We can't control everything, but we can control our response. That's how we fight, that's how we survive." As they returned inside, Ryan felt a sense of clarity. Helios had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and forced them to confront the vulnerabilities of a nation built on technology and trust. But it had also reinforced the resilience of those sworn to protect it. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was action in spite of it. In the weeks that followed, the FBI implemented enhanced monitoring protocols, intelligence sharing networks, and contingency plans inspired by the lessons of Project Helios. The devices were studied, reverse-engineered to understand their mechanisms, and used to train the next generation of cyber-intelligence operatives. Every challenge, every setback, became part of a growing arsenal of knowledge, a hedge against the unknown threats of the future. Epilogue: Shadows and Vigilance. Weeks later, Washington, D.C. had returned to its usual rhythm. Tourists strolled along the National Mall, office lights flickered on at dawn, and the hum of the city seemed peaceful. On the surface, life was normal, but Ryan Callahan knew better. Project Helios had been neutralized, the devices secured, and the mastermind behind it in custody. Yet the warning lingered in his mind: ideas could not be destroyed. Somewhere, someone else might be watching, waiting for an opportunity to revive the chaos. Ryan sat in his office, reviewing reports from the operation. Lena came in, holding a cup of coffee. "You ever get used to this?" she asked, nodding toward the files detailing the near catastrophe. Ryan shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You don't. But you learn to be ready. That's what keeps people safe." Outside, the morning sun glinted off the Capitol building. It was a new day, a fragile peace. Ryan knew that threats would never truly vanish, but heroes would always rise. And as long as he and his team remained vigilant, the nation had a fighting chance. For now, the shadow of Project Helios had passed, but Ryan Callahan knew the game was never truly over. The fight for safety, justice, and the protection of millions was ongoing, and he would face it head-on, no matter what came next. Ryan often reflected on the moral and psychological dimensions of the case. Helios was more than a weapon, it was a test of human ingenuity, ethics, and resilience. It reminded him that the line between innovation and destruction was perilously thin, and that the greatest threats often emerged not from chaos, but from calculated brilliance with no regard for human life. And yet, amidst the tension and vigilance, Ryan also allowed himself moments of quiet satisfaction. They had faced an unprecedented threat, navigated a labyrinth of danger and deception, and emerged successful. Lives had been saved, cities protected, and a crisis averted. The mastermind had been captured, the devices secured, and the nation, for now, remained safe. But Ryan knew this was only one chapter in a continuing story. The world was full of ideas, some brilliant, some terrifying. And the work of those sworn to defend it was never finished. As he looked out over the city one final time that evening, Ryan felt a mixture of resolve and reflection. Helios had challenged him, pushed him to his limits, and reminded him of the stakes. And it had taught him a simple, enduring truth: in a world where darkness and light coexisted in equal measure, courage, vigilance, and humanity were the only weapons capable of keeping the shadows at bay. For Ryan Callahan and his team, the fight would continue. They had learned the hard way that security was never guaranteed, that threats evolved faster than anticipation, and that complacency was the greatest enemy. But they also knew that as long as they were willing to act, to think, and to stand against those who sought to exploit fear and technology for destruction, there would always be hope. And that hope, quiet, persistent, unyielding, was what truly defined the difference between chaos and order, between those who sought to destroy, and those who dedicated themselves to protect. Ryan took a deep breath, letting the cool night air fill his lungs. Tomorrow, the city would rise, the world would move forward, and somewhere, a new threat would be taking shape. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment of peace, knowing that he had done everything in his power to keep the nation safe. Because in the end, that was all a guardian could ever do: act, endure, and stand vigilant against the darkness, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how relentless, and no matter how impossible it might seem. And Ryan Callahan would stand ready, always.